Hey, what's going on, guys? We got a special guest today. We have Richard Greene. He's an attorney by trade from USC Law School. Richard left the practice of law to share his communication breakthroughs with presidents, prime ministers, cabinet ministers, senators, congresspersons, first ladies, political candidates, CEOs and CFOs of Fortune 500 companies, attorneys, judges, Hollywood celebrities, and making professionals, among others, in over 40 countries on 6 different continents. The work includes branding and message development, media training, speech writing, and speech coaching. The work also extends to helping clients overcome the fear of public speaking, a service he provided to Princess Diana and continues to provide to major politicians, business leaders, and professional speakers today. Richard's conducted over 100 international lectures, tours, leading workshops, and doing consulting for the United Nations, the World Health Organization, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Foreign Business School, the Young Presidents Organization, and many, many more, including Walt Disney Company. Richard, how are you doing today? We're excited to have you here on the Clockedin podcast.
Thank you so much, Jordan. I was getting tired even listening to all of that. It's been a long but wonderful career.
Yeah, it's incredible what you've been able to do and accomplish. So where did it all start for you? Where was this ever part of a plan? Like, how did this happen?
Well, the plan was for me to play either left field or center field for the Los Angeles Dodgers, but that didn't work out because I don't have any of the skills that would make that a good thing. My other plan was to become a congressman because I love politics as well and love law. And so I went to law school, graduated USC Law School, and then as I was 5 years into my practice, I get this invitation to go to this event with this guy, this 23-year-old guy who is pictured in a business suit walking on a bed of hot coals and telling you that if you come and pay this money, you can overcome your fear and turn it into power. And I was free that Friday night, and it's like, okay, that sounds cool. And so I went, and it turned out it was Tony Robbins. And I was one of like 150 people, and it turned out it was Tony's first ever seminar in the United States. He had had 2 seminars before like that in Canada. He's 23 years old. And I walked up to him and said, hey, my name is Richard Greene. I'm a lawyer in town. And I have to tell you, you're one of the best communicators I've ever seen in my life. And I have no doubt that you're going to make a huge contribution to the world. And I'd love to help you do that. And he goes, great, let's have lunch. And so we had lunch, and then he moved into my law suite, and we would like stay up till 2 or 3 every morning brainstorming about how his business could get to the next level. And in the process, I learned all of the stuff, at least at that time, that Tony was teaching about neuro-linguistic programming and communication strategy and all of that. And it was fascinating to me. And then I decided that was way more fun than practicing law, and traveled around the world for a little bit, and then came back and was actually working because I wanted to develop my skills in this coaching using neuro-linguistic programming. I actually, when I came back from Europe, or from India, Nepal, and then Europe, and I actually had a child that came soon after that, so I had to take care of her. And I was working because I didn't want to go back to law, because I really wanted to pursue the things I had learned with Tony and to be a motivational speaker. And I was actually working for $7 an hour at a Nutrisystems behavior education clinic to help people who were dealing with being overweight. And it's like, okay, this is kind of different than being a lawyer with my own law practice, but it was great training. And then developed my practice, and then got invited to speak in a year and a half later to speak in Austria, and then went there and then gave a workshop on neuro-linguistic programming, then got invited while I was there to speak in Germany, and then another one, a different part of Austria, and then Frankfurt, and all over, and it just snowballed for, it's now 53 countries. And I think the lesson of it is, are you looking at the work that you do as a job, right? Or are you looking at it as some sort of a campaign that you have to do things? Or is it even deeper and some sort of a spiritual mission that makes your life on the planet that you chose to come into, at least that's my belief, enormously fulfilling? And so I've just followed my bliss. I know that's a bit of a cliche, but
Yeah.
I just think it's horrible for people who are stuck in jobs where they feel like for those 8 or 10 hours they're in prison, when they really, in their heart of hearts, want to be doing something else.
Yeah. Very profound with all the stuff you just said. For you, what was the best way? First of all, with Tony, what'd you see in him that, obviously you said he was a great communicator, but what was it that was that fast? Like, when you guys were going, were you inviting him to your law firm and you're running simultaneously?
So I had an office in a law suite. There was an empty office right next to my office. Tony
Yeah.
didn't really have an office at that time. This was the beginning of 1984. And I said, why don't we rent you that office? And that became the center of operations for what was then Robbins Research International. And but it was great because we got to spend a lot of time talking. I introduced him to a bunch of people. I helped him with his PR. I helped him with his strategies, and at the same time, he's showing me, this unbelievable proprietary, perspective on so many things. And it was like the University of Tony Robbins, and I had a private
Yeah.
tutor.
Yeah. I mean, as big as he's gotten, it's incredible what you could have learned, what you did learn. And obviously we saw the skills that you put through that.
Yeah, just to answer your question, I mean, I'm fascinated by people who are extraordinary, and in sports and business and whatever. And Tony happens to be, and I'm sure many people who are seeing this have seen him in one way or another. He happens to be one of the smartest, most creative, most dynamic. I mean, what you see on TV or in those seminars is who he is, like, all the time. And it's like, wow,
Yeah.
this guy is in a really lovely way, kind of a freak of nature. And it's like, I'm down. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that brings it up to one of the biggest benefits is being around people who push you, being around people who motivate you. And we hear the 5 people that we surround ourselves with are, we're going to become more like them. And to have
yeah,
Tony Robbins in your wheelhouse is not a bad person to have around.
yeah. I love that saying. That was a saying by Jim Rohn, who was Tony's first kind of motivational guru. And he said, who you are is the average, excuse me, is the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if one of
Yeah.
those 5 happens to be Tony Robbins, that's going to have a certain effect. And if one of the 5 is someone who's constantly playing the victim role or mode in your life, or they're lazy, or they're addicted to drugs, or whatever, I mean, that's going to have an influence too.
Absolutely. And to even add to that portion, something I've realized is that since a lot of people are staying at home, are at home, working from home, that it's become, those 5 people are now becoming books, podcasts, television shows. it's becoming everything that we consume.
Or
So now we sit,
Jordan Edwards podcast. There you go. You could be one of the 5 for lots of people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate that. So for you, you go on this spree with Tony Robbins, traveling around the world. How were you guys attracting audiences everywhere you went? Because that was way before that was a little bit before the internet, right?
No, way before the internet. No, you would call people, you would send letters, you would have a friend say, hey, why don't you come? Somebody's interested in your work. He may want to host an event, and you go for lunch or coffee and you drive across town, right? And then a few years after that, or right around that time, the fax machine is being developed. I mean, it's incredible how fast and far we've come. But yeah, he kind of took off, and he would do an event, and then people would come up to me or someone else on his team and say, hey, I want to bring him to Chicago, or I want to bring him to New York or whatever. And I would help negotiate that. Yeah, I mean, it just was this organic growing of a phenomenon because he's such an impactful, unique guy.
Absolutely. So for yourself, when you went on your own, were you concerned in that area? Because it seems like you've been able to meet with these super high level people again and again and again. And what do you think one of the ways of doing that is? And it's not even we're talking for a minute, it's the coaching dynamic is something very different. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the question is, how do you even get into that space, into their zeitgeist, their worlds? And it happens so many different ways. I mean, for example, it happens for me as well. If somebody does know about me and says, come to Vienna, Austria, and I'm there, and then someone's in the audience and says, I want you to come speak to my company. Or, for example, the Philippines is having a presidential election. I was doing some work for the Young Presidents Organization. Someone who's a very wealthy business person in the Philippines said, I want you to come and do a week's worth of training for my company in Manila.
Oh, wow.
Flew me out, paid me, a very nice fee. And then while I was there, towards the end, I said, I want to introduce you to my friend so-and-so, who happened to be running for president of the Philippines 5 years ago. And I said, he could really use your help because he's not breaking through yet. And I think that you could help him be more natural, be more charismatic, whatever. And then we had a meeting, and then the presidential candidate, flew me back, like a month later to follow him around the Philippines on helicopters and private jets and give him feedback as he's going from city to city doing his campaign tour. And then,
wow.
and then said, oh, and our vice president, our candidate for vice president, who is now one of the presidential candidates for the Philippines, Leni Robredo, she wants to meet with you too. So it's just, I think if you have a niche that you are good in, and you are authentic and honest and not bullshitting people, and they don't see that you're trying to manipulate because you just want money or access or whatever, and it's like, no, I want to help. That's what I love, is taking someone from here to there. And so that's an example of how it happens. And just go to events, in a classy way, talk about what you do. And oftentimes it'll say, and having a TED Talk helps, of course, but even before the TED Talk, they'll say, oh, so what do you do? I teach people to overcome their fear of public speaking and how to be a much better, more impactful public speaker. And they go, oh my God, I need that. Or, oh my God, my CEO needs that. Or, oh my God, my sales team needs that. And it's like, cool, let's talk.
Yeah, it's the consistently bringing up what exactly you do, because there's so many of us that we sit here and we say we do this, but in reality, a lot of us are salespeople. We're salespeople to our friends who you might want to go to this roller coaster event this weekend, whatever it is. You might want to go to the football game, or you might want to go to this dinner, whatever it is. We always are trying to sell and influence people in a bunch of different ways. So by telling people exactly what you do and they know what you do, it definitely helps with that dynamic.
Right, but without a sense of desperation, right? And without a manipulation. And it's just kind of putting it out there. Here's what I do. I love what I do. I'd be happy to help you. Right.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do in the beginning of a career, because it's like, oh my God, I got to get business and whatever. But, you just, again, if you really focus on the real core of why we do what we do, hopefully, it's to help other people. And if someone doesn't need my services, or if I'm not the right guy for them to get where they want to go, I don't want to take their money.
Yeah.
I want to help them find whatever they need. So that sense of being, Tony talks a lot about the 6 basic human needs. And one of them is significance. It's like, hey, look at me. I'm great. I have a TED Talk or whatever it is, right? That's one kind of egoic way of communicating. And then as you get older, it's a little easier to go, what's really fun for me, I like getting paid. I like, being flown to wonderful places and all of that. But I want to make a contribution. So the difference between focusing on the human need of being significant as opposed to the human need of making a contribution. And if you're focused on making a contribution, people can feel it. They're going to let down their resistance, and they're going to, yeah, wow, I'd love for you to make a contribution to my company.
Yeah. Yeah. And how can I help you in this certain way? Yeah, I love that, because there's so many of us that don't live that authentic life. How do you think people can overcome that when they struggle with it? Thinking I should be here, 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 like some of the instances you brought up earlier.
Well, you can, FOMO is a thing. And there is this, oh, if I go here, I'll get this. And if I go, be strategic, figure out what you're going to do. Tony talks about proximity. During COVID, it was really hard, obviously. I just heard we may be going back into another kind of bad situation in the fall. But it's a lot easier when you're standing next to somebody, at a dinner party or a cocktail party or an event, or standing in line to get into a concert or whatever. I just be social, but give a shit about the other person, right? Don't try to sell yourself, because that doesn't wear well. People don't want to be sold. They want you to be interested in them. And one of the secrets about that is discipline yourself to not say a frickin' word about yourself until they ask you. It's like, in other words, go tell me about you. Oh man, so you have a podcast. How'd you get into that? What's your favorite? Who's your favorite guest? And whatever. And genuinely, if someone's not a total ass,
Yeah.
they're going to go, oh, wow, this guy's really interesting. And I love how interested he is in what I'm interested in, which is me. Right? That's what that person thinking. And they said, well, so tell me about yourself. And now, instead of having to force it in, you've got an open field, and you can, run for a touchdown if that's what's going to happen during that interaction.
Yeah, and that's one of the most common things I see when new groups of people are having conversations. They'll dive in and go, like a little mock conversation. Oh, Richard, where are you from? Massachusetts. Sure. Oh, me too. And it just, I imagine it, I see a spotlight when going into a conversation. I see a spotlight on the person speaking, and then the person being spoken about. So like, we really want to have that spotlight shine on the other person. And I think that the podcast has definitely helped me do that, because it's given me, it's not about me, it's about you. And it's about hearing what success things you've done and what stories you have and where we can extract value for the audience.
The model for this, and I think people really can relate to this, is no one is nervous when they're doing the best communication that people probably ever do. And that is, you've just gone to an incredible movie. Hopefully people are going back to movies soon, right? And you walk out of the movie and you run into a group of friends from your hometown. And you spontaneously do what? You go, oh my God, I just saw this movie. You know, the cinematography, the acting, I was laughing, I was crying. It was incredible, right? And why are you doing that? You're not making money from Fox or Disney or DreamWorks or whoever produced the film. You're doing it because we have a basic inherent human desire to help other people. And you got something, I break down, it's okay, you paid $15 for the film, you got $200 worth of value, you're giving them $185, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the value over and above what they're going to pay, that you think you're pretty darn sure that they're going to get from that. It's like, oh my God, tell me what you thought of it.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point. I've never thought about that. Yeah.
And that's what my public speaking is. It's like, hey, I've spent my whole life studying public speaking, how to connect, how to hold an audience in the palm of the hands, how in an organic way, in an honest way, not a manipulative way, how to message, right? All of this. I can't wait to share it with you because I'm authentically passionate about it. And it's really fun. Like when you see a movie, you go to a great concert. Oh my God, you have to go see Sting, or you have to go see, Jay-Z or whoever, right? And that's how human beings really connect, by coming from their heart and suggesting things from that space rather than, okay, that analytical whatever. I mean, you can have that in there as well, but and it'll come. And if it doesn't come, maybe you need to tweak things. Maybe that's the universe's way of saying, hey, instead of focusing on neuro-linguistic programming, why don't you focus on public speaking? Or instead of focusing generically on public speaking, why don't you make a specialty out of helping people overcome what is the greatest fear in the world, which is public speaking, right? So you just keep listening to the universe, listening to feedback, listening internally to your heart. What do I want to do when I grow up? What am I passionate about? And try not to ever get stuck doing things that you're not passionate about, because that'll suck the life out of you and dry you up and age you.
Yeah, that's for sure. I've seen too many people live great lives, but it's always going for the weekend. And I love this concept that you bring up of sometimes you're like almost there and you just don't even realize it yet. It's a 1 millimeter turn and you're almost there.
Yeah.
From going from public speaking to helping people overcome public speaking fear.
Yeah.
It's very powerful because it's funny because early in the career, someone always feels like they come from a lack. There's not that abundance mindset. But when you're in this place of sharing, it's an abundance. It's exciting.
Yeah, I think that's well put. That's absolutely well put. And again, the bottom line is people will feel whether you genuinely want to help them or just help yourself.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Yeah. It's hard if you don't have enough money to pay your rent to be thinking about other people. But it comes, one thing comes from the other, and you're here, I believe, to learn lessons, and sometimes challenges force you to develop your muscles in ways that you otherwise wouldn't, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. So let's dive into public speaking a little bit. I mean, I know we've been going on it, but
can I ask you a big favor?
Yeah.
I have a short like 15-minute thing. Is there any way that we can pick this up? And I'm happy to give you some more minutes after that, but I have like a 1:15 that I have to jump onto.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay,
I have
so
yeah.
I'm gonna use this in like 1:45. Okay, can I call you back then?
I have a group 5 to 6. We can figure it out. I'll shoot you an email though. It's
Okay,
probably gonna
thank
be
you.
because I have something 5 to 6. But yeah.
Okay, well, let's do it whenever you want, and I'll wear the same
Okay.
shirt.
Okay.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much.
Sounds
Take
good
care.
too.